Hello everyone, my name is Samu Konttinen, I'm the CEO of F-Secure. This is part of our COVID-19 and cybersecurity webinar series that we are creating to help our customers and partners sharing best practices, what have we ourselves experienced and learned during the crisis. In mid-February, we at F-Secure with my leadership team, we faced a difficult situation. We had our annual partner conference upcoming in late May in Italy. And at that time, we started to see the first signs of this corona situation escalating. But a lot of that was still coming from China, and only, I would say, the first signs of it really becoming something serious and something extraordinary in Europe. So there was not that much information at hand, but we still had to make a decision. And we made a decision to postpone or actually to cancel the event. And it is a good example that in times like this, you have to make difficult decisions, and often you have to make decisions with very little information. The partner conference that we cancelled, typically at F-Secure, we work with more than 200 telecom operators. And typically we get almost half of them joining our event. So the normal attendance to our event would be about 100 telecom operators and same amount of value-added resellers or MSSPs. So really a core audience for F-Secure. And this event really is the signature flagship event for F-Secure. Thus cancelling it was not an easy decision. At the same time, when we made the decision to cancel that event, we also ignited our crisis management process, which is part of our business continuity process to F-Secure. And I have personally been chairing that crisis management process ever since. So interesting times for sure. Leading a company like F-Secure, as a CEO, you have to make decisions. So CEOs need to act. And in times like this, what I've captured and what is very important to balance right, that you have to be able to make decisions fast. You have to be very open, honest, and transparent with your communication to your people. And at the same time, as I gave this example of needing to do a decision to cancel our annual partner event with too little information, you are bound to make mistakes. And you cannot be too afraid of making those mistakes. But you have to have a mindset and readiness to iterate so that you can correct your decisions when you have more information available, or once you have realized that the decision that you took was not the right one. And while you are making these decisions, although you should always, of course, try to make decisions that are pragmatic and logical and business-wise sense-making, but in these decisions, you shouldn't never abandon your culture. And this is also, I think, something what sometimes makes decision-making quite difficult. You definitely don't want to be making decisions that are only business perspective, but abandoning your culture. And culture is very important, and culture is very different to different companies. At F-Secure, our culture has always been very people-oriented. Actually, when F-Secure was founded more than 30 years ago, in the beginning, the company was called Data Fellows. And still today, we call all our people fellows. And I kind of like this. So the fellow word has a certain tone and a quite nice sentiment to it. But in addition to making decisions, I think it's very important that you create an environment that is physically and emotionally safe. Very important is psychological safety. There has been a lot of studies done by many great organizations observing what is the secret source, what is the key behind high-performing teams. And very often it boils down to psychological safety being the key. And in times like this, like coronavirus, global pandemic, this psychological safety, I believe, is more important than ever before. These are very uncertain times, and uncertainty creates fears and anxiety. And how do you resolve that? What is the main painkiller for your fears and anxiety? I believe it's definitely communication. We at F-Secure, we have invested a lot of time and effort for communication. We have had all our business areas and functions communicating to their people in 1 to 2 weeks intervals. We have held calls and briefing sessions to all our line managers weekly. We have communicated IT, remote working related topics several times a week. And I, as a CEO, I've sent my fellow comms in every 1 or 2 weeks. Sometimes an email, sometimes as a video card. And with these comms that we've taken, and definitely what is my own learning and perception to this is that you have to be very genuine and you have to be ready to expose yourself. You have to be vulnerable. So I believe that you have to emphasize those often soft aspects of communication. I've tried to make my own communications to our people very reflective, not only talking about business, but also reflecting how do I feel myself personally and how should we be thinking about certain things. And very interestingly, with these comms that I've done and addressing all our 1,700 fellows, I've never gotten as much feedback as I have gotten to some of my comms. A good data point is that about 2 years ago, we finalized our so far biggest acquisition. At that time, F-Secure was about 1,200 people, and we acquired a UK-based cybersecurity company, adding more than 400 people to F-Secure. So it was a big move, very bold and courageous move. By far the biggest acquisition that we've ever done. And when I communicated to all our fellows about this great step that we've taken as a company, communicated about that acquisition, of course, I got a lot of great feedback from our fellows. A lot of those thumbs up emails and congratulating that we are making the right moves and congratulating that the acquired company seems to be fitting to our strategy very well. But still, the amount of feedback that I've gotten to my COVID-19 related comms to our fellows, the volume of that feedback has by far exceeded the volume that we got for the acquisition related information. I think this serves as a good example how communication is very important, and a risk of over communicating, a risk of communicating too much is worth taking. And how you communicate, it's very important that there needs to be those reflections, not just the hardcore business topics. So a little bit as a summary, so our formula at F-Secure for what comes to communication is be transparent, have honesty, have absolute honesty. You have to be ready to share even the difficult information. communicating to your fellows, keeping them informed about issues and changes. Also communicating about new ways of working and new ways of engaging, because obviously this remote working mode is very different to all of us. And reminding your employees about the resources and help you have available for them. And as I said before, so in the communication, showing your humane side. So showing that softness and reflecting. And at the end, you as a leader, when you communicate, you have to show direction. In times like this, I believe many of you, similarly as F-Secure, you are pondering a lot about your strategy and about your business continuity. You are thinking about different scenarios. What we have learned in building these scenarios is very important, that you need to have some common ground between your leadership team. So how do you build these scenarios? The fact is that no one really knows how this corona situation will develop. Will this last for 2 months, 5 months, 9 months? There are endless amount of speculations and endless amount of different scenarios that different consulting companies have produced. No one really knows how this is going to work out. But once you start planning business scenarios for yourself, how it will impact your business, it's very important that you agree that all of your leadership team, all of your business areas, that you plan with the same set of assumptions. You can't have a situation where some of your teams believe that this will go away and the situation will start to ease up in a couple of months, and then some other parts of the organization thinks that, well, they think that this is going to take 7 months before the recovery starts. You can't manage company if you are not planning with the same set of assumptions. So perhaps the point being that although you don't know how this will continue, but you have to agree what set of assumptions you are working on together, and then you start building scenarios for your business using the same underlying macro assumptions. And business continuity overall, I think it's very important that you take a very holistic, comprehensive view to it. Starting from those scenarios that we previously talked about. So one of the topics that we at F-Secure, we've tried to think a lot, that what data we would need, what piece of information would be very precious and important, so that we would get to validate whether some of our scenarios are seeming to be more likely than not. So thinking about what are the right questions that you should be answering and putting effort. So how would you come across and find that data that is either supporting some of your scenarios or working against them? So you really have to have that hunger for data. Us being a cybersecurity company, so obviously for what comes to business continuity, one obvious area where we have poured in a lot of effort, a lot of our best people, is thinking about the threat scenarios. So how is this now changing? What are the new attacking vectors that are surfacing? And especially how remote work exposes our customers perhaps to all different kinds of risks, the risks that were not there before. So COVID is definitely exposing all of us to a special challenge. Moving to full remote work in few days, I'm sure has been a tremendous challenge for many companies. At F-Secure, we managed to complete moving to a remote work worldwide across all our offices in almost 30 countries worldwide in just few days. And I'm very sure that what helped us a lot is that we already had a lot of culture and heritage in working remotely. But of course, some extra effort was needed to ensure that the network bandwidth is supportive to this working model, and some of other IT-related things needed to be upgraded slightly. But I'm also very, very happy and very proud of our people that we managed to continue operating our SLAs without a dent. So protecting our customers has not deteriorated at all. So we managed to continue protecting our customers same way as we always do. And I believe that in times like this, protecting our customers from cyber attacks is more important than ever before. But these changes, as an example, moving into a remote mode and the corona situation in general, this is always also an opportunity to renew yourself. It is an opportunity to innovate. And we have several of great examples already being developed at F-Secure, where we have not only coped with the situation of corona, but also innovated new ways of working, better ways of protecting and helping and serving our customers. From F-Secure's business mix, about a quarter is that we are providing cybersecurity services like consulting to our customers. And that is definitely one area where we had to reinvent some of the ways of working, as a lot of consulting you obviously cannot go and deliver on site at these times. So we had to innovate together with our customers, new ways of working, new best practices, develop even new technologies and tools. So how do you deliver remotely things that you have in the past always delivered on site? And why I think that this is a good example is that even once the COVID-19 situation starts to ease up at some point, I'm 100% sure that to some extent we will not revert back to old ways of working, but these new ways that was now developed under this crisis, they will become a new norm for F-Secure, a new norm how we work together with our customers, a new norm how we deliver certain services more effectively. A personal reflection for myself definitely would be that now, once moving to this remote work mode, in the beginning I did great mistakes on scheduling my days with back-to-back video conferences, sometimes with not even a lunch break. And this obviously wasn't a good idea. And since then I've learned better ways to pace my days with sufficient breaks. And I hope that for many of you, this is not really innovative and groundbreaking, but something that you have done already for a long time before COVID-19. But perhaps that also works as an example that the new ways of working was developed during the crisis, at least for me. And I'm 100% sure that again, once this COVID-19 starts to ease up and we go back to normal or back to new normal, I'm not going to revert booking my diary back to back with meetings and calls and stuff like that, because it's so important that we all have time to reload our batteries and reflect. So perhaps that's a personal anecdote. How do you yourself learn from the crisis and develop something new for yourself also going forward? But this COVID is also impacting our industry significantly. So phishing has for a long time been a big menace to all organizations and to individuals. And we see that the attackers have already started exploiting the burst of information and really going extra mile on finding new ways to take advantage of the situation. Ad hoc infrastructure changes. Now as companies are moving into the remote mode work, there are a lot of pressure for organizations to change some of their IT policies and how things work. And often once you start doing these ad hoc changes, you may overlook some of the security policies or good practices that you have developed over the years because you just want to get certain things fixed. And now overlooking these security related topics typically is not a good idea. Another area definitely is that people are now working from home, which is in most of the cases very much more insecure network than what the network at your office would be. So these are definitely some of the highlights that we all should be thinking about. So cybersecurity is not an area where companies should sacrifice to help them rise to the challenge. One example that I've heard from many companies is that there is a lot of temptation to bring your own device policies. People are working from home and then they are going to their IT department and asking and pushing that why couldn't they be using some of their own devices to access some company resources, especially if companies are using a lot of cloud resources. So it's a very obvious and understandable ask from your people that why couldn't I use my own device to use these cloud-based services. Very key is that you are not starting to cut corners for what is your bring your own device policy right now, not in times like this. The cyber criminals are opportunistic and they also understand what many companies are now going through with these asks. So be very mindful of that. And the company network security that you would have fully in place if you are working in the office, this might not always be in place once you work in the home. Although using technologies like VPN gives you a lot of coverage, so technically you are working in the company network, but there is an increased usage of business applications without VPN as well. But as a CEO, I of course understand that we all have economic pressure and this pandemic is creating huge demands to shift into this remote mode of working. But I just advise you don't start taking shortcuts with your cybersecurity. And some of the essentials I think that each CEO should look at in the light of Corona-19. You can, as an example, discuss with your IT people how this new situation changes the threat model that you have for your company. Are there some new threat actors possibly interested on you more than ever before? Are they possibly exploiting some new tools and technologies that was not seen possible or relevant in the past? Working from home emphasis puts a lot of additional emphasis to importance of endpoint security. A lot of times you might not be protected with the company firewall or other network security capabilities. So endpoint security and your capability to detect attacks at the endpoint is critical. And also one very good topic for you to ask from your IT team that has this changed for what comes to our capability to respond to incidents. Very often the circumstances is different if all your people are working at the office versus if they are spread around the city, spread around the country in their homes. And then what if there is an incident? What is your capability to start solving that incident? And at worst case, if you are up against a very capable, persistent, advanced attacker. So what is your capability to start fighting back? And to close off, some of the key takeaways. So during crises, recognize and correct mistakes, but avoid the blaming culture. Psychological safety is key. Do your homework for what comes to scenario planning so that you are prepared for different outcomes. Think twice before making changes in your IT temporarily. And make sure that you continue investing into your people, into communications, and not overlooking cybersecurity needs and not taking shortcuts, although there is a pressure to move fast with business continuity related topics. So that's all I had. Some of the reflections from my side, how we have experienced COVID-19 at F-Secure. What are some of the mistakes that we've done in the course of responding to the pandemic? I guess we have now time for some questions. So one question here is that how do you think it will change your company's working patterns in the future? Will you encourage more home working? I think this is a good question and something that we are pondering a lot as we speak. At least from F-Secure perspective, we've seen that a shift to remote work was very smooth. And interestingly, we've also gotten information that in some areas of the company, as an example for what comes to our software developers, I've heard many people saying that, well, working from home maybe not always so nice as you are not able to meet with your colleagues, but the velocity is better. And for what comes to developing software, of course, engineering velocity is one of the key metrics. And if that is one of the outcomes, that having more flexibility, more working from home makes us more productive, I think this is definitely pointing us towards a direction of working more remotely. One question was that is this the biggest change we've seen during the F-Secure history? Is there something even bigger from F-Secure perspective? I think we've never gone through a situation like this within company's history. So from a macroeconomic perspective, I think this COVID is possibly the biggest change for all companies. But I think specifically for F-Secure, our business has proven to be quite resilient. So companies are not suddenly starting to think that because of the coronavirus you wouldn't need cybersecurity, or millions of our consumer customers are not thinking that you wouldn't need to protect yourself. So business perspective, this has not been very challenging for F-Secure, although in some areas of our business we have definitely started to see slowness. So it is impacting us as well, but definitely not as much as some other industries like hospitality or airlines or restaurants. So from that perspective, I consider us quite lucky. Then there's a question that have you seen any company benefits from your local teams working from home? Would you adapt your business in any way as a result? I think a little bit talked about this. So we have created some new innovative ways of working. And I think why this corona is in a way interesting, that it kind of creates an even playing field for all companies. So you could be a company that is 5 times bigger than F-Secure and you have more resources in many parts of the world, more people than we do, but you can't really take full leverage of those local teams compared to some other company who is not so local because you can't go and meet people. So this, in a way, evens the global playing field, and I think for agile and innovative companies like F-Secure, I think this definitely is an opportunity for us. One question, what's the best way for CEOs to communicate during these exceptional times? Do you prefer all hands video conferences, recorded video messages, or email communication? We at F-Secure, we've used all these forms. So there's been emails, there's been videos, there've been recorded videos. Although I think delivery of video calls or recording video greetings is perhaps somewhat more difficult than taking your time and writing that email. Video is always still much more personal. So I kind of like that myself, and it also gives you better tools and better ability to reflect. People see you and their communication feels more genuine as they see the source. There's a question, many organizations are saying their security budget is being squeezed even further. What guidance would you offer them besides what you've already spoken about? I think it's understandable that during times like this, there are companies who are definitely winners. These crises like Corona will always create winners. There are always those companies who manage to innovate and adapt to new ways better than anybody else, faster than anybody else. So there are those winners, and I think that the winners will continue taking care of their cybersecurity. But there are also many losers. There are companies who might go bankrupt, but there are a lot of companies, I believe, who will not go bankrupt, but they will struggle. And I think it's quite understandable that if your business volume squeezes, then your cybersecurity budgets may squeeze as well. Key is that how do you spend the precious dollars or euros you have. In our industry, there are so many different technologies and so many different products, and you so easily get bloated by just buying another product and another product and another product, and very rarely it's the real answer to your solution of just buying more products. You have to have a combination of technology and people who know how to use that technology. The greatest firewall isn't very effective if it's configured wrongly. So my advice would be to try to find that balance of investing into technology, but also investing into people who can use the technology, or have partners who can do that for you if you don't have skilled people in-house. And then there is a question that how do you see your HR practices will be changed related to work and employees? So that's also a topic that we've considered a lot. As I said at some point of my presentation, so we've already in the past had a very flexible culture at F-Secure allowing remote work. So from that perspective, this is not introducing anything very new. But the more there is this remote work, it obviously opens up a lot of other questions, and not only from the company perspective, like how do you manage your people, but also from your people perspective, how do you make sure that your people stay healthy, and how do you support them emotionally so that people are not getting too distant from one another. And the setup of working remotely, it's definitely something that for some individuals it works really well, and then there are also those individuals who absolutely miss the social context and the social side of things, meeting with people, engaging with people face to face much more. So I don't think that there is a clever one size fits all formula for what comes to new ways of working in HR policy perspective. There is a question about recent research showing that Finland has the most secure mobile devices for our country's population, which is a major benefit for remote workers under the current worldwide lockdown circumstances. In your opinion, is this due to cultural reasons, or has F-Secure influenced this in some way? What do you suggest needs to be done to achieve this in other regions? I hadn't come across this information myself, that Finland would be having more secure mobile devices proportionate to our population compared to other countries. If this is true, it's obviously very, very good news, and I'm very happy for my fellow countrymen. I guess overall, one reflection could be that this just goes to a broader topic of security awareness, and in Finland, cybersecurity, privacy-related topics have traditionally been quite much on the table. So it's something that a lot of people have been exposed to. So it's perhaps a big topic of cultural education that security and privacy are very important. There is a question about what do I think about the anti-Zoom sentiment. Well, that's obviously a very hot topic, and it has been covered in the media massively. I think there are several different sides to it. First, I think it's absolutely proven and the case that Zoom wasn't perhaps built security-wise as well as it should. But at the same time, you take any software and you suddenly expose that software to tens and tens of millions of people, and some of them being very aware of the security, and they start looking into how that particular software is built. So I cannot be that critical towards Zoom because these mistakes are coming so easily. My personal point perhaps would be that I hope that the Zoom is taking a lot of learnings from this, and the topic has now been covered so much, and that they should have all the tools and needed advice and know-how now in place to make the needed corrective moves so that they can start restoring their credibility and building a software that is design-wise built securely. And that's not only for Zoom, but that's a great advice for any company who is building software for mass market. So you have to make security-wise good decisions from the very beginning. We now see in the case of Zoom how difficult it is that if you implementing certain things in a little bit wrong fashion, that correcting them afterwards is difficult. So make the right decisions from the very beginning once you start designing your software. And I wish all the best for Zoom, that they are now making the needed corrective actions to their software, and eventually I'm sure they will start to get their credibility back as well. if you could give one piece of advice right now during COVID-19, what would it be? Well, that's a small question. I guess at least for businesses, it is that try to stay alerted so that you would understand even the small signals, something that is perhaps lurking behind the corner that might impact you. And try to understand different scenarios and innovate. There is new opportunities always coming from the crisis, and I realized that now I gave 3 advices and the list could go on and on. But maybe it's the innovation piece that perhaps I think is most relevant to all companies. There are companies who are fighting for survival. They absolutely need to be innovating their way out from all this. And then there are companies who are struggling. So how could you struggle less with innovation? And then there are companies that are doing just fine. But even those companies who are just doing fine, also for those companies there is opportunity to do not just fine, but do super well if you just figure out how the world will be different in your industry post-COVID or during COVID times, and try to take advantage of this reset of industrial dynamics in so many business verticals. I guess we have covered pretty much all the questions I got from you. So thank you very much for your questions, and thank you for joining F-Secure COVID-19 and Cybersecurity webinar. Bye-bye.